All right, let's bring it back in. I was going to do bird noises if this doesn't work, so we'll see how this goes. All right. So for my session, I'm going to be talking about user experience design. But before we get into that, I want you to get to know me a little bit. So the first one I'm going to start with is the Liverpool one. So I am from the US, but my boyfriend is the biggest Liverpool fan in the entire world. So I have to watch Premier League basically every weekend, and I am often told to wake up very early, check the score, so I will know his mood for the day. So I just wanted to open up with that a little bit. And then Love Island, and I'm very disappointed that a lot of you don't like Love Island. I absolutely love those trash reality shows. It's one of my favorite things in the world. We also have Love Island in the US, so I've watched that as well. I'm very upset about the last UK version with Amy and Curtis. That killed me, so that was devastating if you watch that. And then the rest of this really does have to do with the session. So these are all things that we're going to talk a little bit about in the session and get into. So this is the session, UX-driven learning design. So for those of you who just entered, we are talking about user experience design. And my name's Melissa, and I work at Amazon. So I'm a learning experience design manager at Amazon by day, but by night, I am designing and developing different solutions outside of work and posting about it. So I have a series, or what they now call newsletters on LinkedIn. It's called This Side Up. And so folks can go on LinkedIn, connect with me, subscribe to the newsletter. I'm really excited about the things I post. They're often things that help my team out. So my team is a team of 6 learning experience designers and 1 visual designer. And we're in a greater team of 30, which is a global team. And so I'm from Seattle, Washington, Pacific Northwest, but originally from Pennsylvania. And I am an avid tweeter as well. So if you're on Twitter, that's my handle, and you may have seen me posting throughout the week. And you can connect with me there on LinkedIn. And then I also have a website, melslearninglab.com. So I've passed out some cards just in case anyone wants some of the resources from this session. So today we are going to talk about 4 things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just general UX, UI. What is it? Why do we care about it? Then we're going to go into project improvement. So this is where we're going to do the usability test. And we're going to talk about how you can use XAPI in projects as well for user experience testing. And then surveys, which deals a little bit with AI and natural language processing, but I'm going to bring it to you in a way that's easy for you to implement in your organizations. Then we're going to do a quick question round, which is a competitive round. So what I want you to do right now is select one person at your table who's going to be the answerer to the polls, and then the rest of you are going to be talking about the why behind why you answered, and then I'm going to have someone from that table volunteer to give that answer. And then David Swaddle is our Willy Wonka up here. He is from Switzerland, and he has chocolates. So whoever answers gets a chocolate from our own Willy Wonka, David Swaddle. Thank you, David. And then lastly, we're going to talk about design systems. So design systems are near and dear to my heart, and hopefully we can get to this section. So this is about how you create cohesive, accessible, scalable experiences for your organization. So you can have everything. You can save money. You can have an amazing usable experience, and design systems is a way to do that. So let's get into it. What is UX and what is UI? So UX is user experience, and UI is user interface. So I like to think of it in the same way as learning and development and instructional design. You have this umbrella in instructional design and learning and development. So when you think about that, there's all these different jobs under it. There's instructional designer, e-learning developer, instructional technologist, there's LMS admin, there's trainers, there's facilitators, all of that. And it's the same with user experience design. So user experience design is an umbrella, and there's tons of roles under it, and UI is one of them. So UI designers sit within user experience design. There's also designers who just work on things like voice. So if you think about Google Home and Alexa and those types of things, there's someone who just does the UX for that. So you've got tons and tons of roles under this UX umbrella. But when you think about UX on its own, it doesn't have to do with the visuals per se. It's more about helping users achieve their goals. So usability testing, user research, developing personas that tell us who are those people, and then creating user stories. And then that moves over to the UI place. So when we think about e-learning, you've got all that, and then you move over to develop what does that actual storyboard look like? Do we use rounded buttons on this? What does the navigation look like? So those are the things that we do in the UI space. So it's the visual design, the layouts, and the branding. So I've got this video, and I apologize if you have attended my talk before and seen this, but I absolutely can't move away from using it. So how many of you, by raise of hands, have seen this video? Okay, awesome. This is great. So this will be a treat. I'm going to go ahead and play it.
It happened again. I thought it was behind me, but the dreams came back. I was up all night. I can't eat. I can't sleep.
What's wrong?
It haunts me. Nothing?
Stephen, not this again.
I forgot about it for years, but then I remembered that Avatar, a giant international blockbuster, used the papyrus font as its logo.
Avatar, the movie from like 9 years ago?
Yeah, he just highlighted Avatar, he clicked the drop-down menu, and then he just randomly selected papyrus, like a thoughtless child just wandering by a garden, just yanking leaves along the way.
And so now you're worried about the sequels that are coming out?
They're making more?
Yes, I think I heard that one.
So they changed the artwork. They fixed it.
It looks similar.
He just got away with it. This man, this professional graphic designer. Was it laziness? Was it cruelty?
You've shown me this before. I don't even think this is literally papyrus. Maybe that was the starting point, but they clearly modified this.
But whatever they did, it wasn't enough!
And now here I am doing what I vowed to never do again. Sitting outside his house, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, to see him do his little things, live his insane little life.
I think about it every time I see papyrus.
Okay, where else do you even see this font?
Hookah bars, Shakira merch, off-brand teas.
My God, are you okay? What happened?
Do you remember the Avatar logo?
Yeah, it was tribal yet futuristic.
Papyrus!
Sure.
You know what you did? I know what you did!
All right, so you're probably thinking, what the heck? So one of the things I want to discuss when it comes to user experience design and user interface design is a thing called aesthetic usability. So aesthetic usability it's this effect that is written, and if you look it up, there's articles on it everywhere on Twitter, or not Twitter, but Google, if you Google it. So it's this thing where we say things that are more aesthetically pleasing are automatically seen as more usable. So it's absolutely crazy that something like this went mainstream. So when we think about fonts, when we think about the design in our everyday lives, it really does make such an impact. But when you think about the aesthetic usability effect, there's also this flip side, this kind of like evil side. So there is research that also shows that it can mask small usability problems as well. So I just like to show that because I think it makes such a big impact on how a design or user experience affects our lives. So it's something that can really drive us to do something, to hate something, to maybe not want to take a learning, to exit out of our course. It's something that's very important, and it can save us money, it can drive us to do different things, and while we have our learning objectives, if someone can't use something, if it's not accessible, if it's not delightful, then it's not going to make as big of an impact on performance. So that brings me to the next piece. How many of you have watched Game of Thrones by raise of hands? Okay, a lot of people, I'm glad. So I was at ATD International Conference the other year, the year that Oprah was there, and I was very happy to see Oprah. And one of the things that made me so upset was it was the Game of Thrones season finale, and my friends and I, or colleagues rather, we went and got tickets to this showing. So we're waiting in line, and we're so excited to see Game of Thrones, and they're not letting us in. And so we run back to the hotel and we say, can we get a room? Can we get a room for screening? And so we go down and we're in the room and we see this remote. And this is my absolute worst user experience terror of my life. No, I'm just kidding. But it was pretty bad. So when we look at this remote, and if you haven't used one before, it was just really hard. We couldn't figure out how to get the TV to work. Nothing was working. There were 3 of these, and they were all different. So this is like absolute overkill. So when I think about user experience, I think everything that is on a screen or in a product, it needs to have an intention for being there. It needs to have its place, or otherwise it causes cognitive overload. It doesn't allow you to focus on what's important or achieve your goal. So what I like is, and this is something that I have an Amazon Fire Stick. Does everyone know what this is? And so it's such a simple device, and it gets you what you need. So if I want to get on Netflix and just hit that skip intro button, like I don't have to think about where I'm clicking or pressing. It's just a beautifully designed product. And so it's something that I see as a really great user experience for my needs as a user, and that's what we're supposed to focus on, the user, right? So the next thing I want you to do in your group is discuss what is the most frustrating for you in a learning experience when it comes to something like user interface, and why. And then I want the one person who you've designated as the Mentimeter typer person to answer, and then that will come up on the screen. So go ahead and discuss and then do that. All right, can we come back now? Awesome. Does anyone want to volunteer to explain their answer and how you came to that answer? And then David will give you a chocolate. Any volunteers? And this is great. Lots of responses.
Yeah, so for us, it's easy consensus that a lack of autonomy. You know, so when the flow is forced upon you and you can't like click next, you can't skim through, and you've got to follow the prescriptive thing. You know, it drives us all mad.
Yeah, leading people by the nose.
That's a really good one, and I'm just going to take one just because of time's sake, because there is a lot to go through. But I absolutely love that when you're stuck, when you've made a decision and you can't go back from it. And that's something that you can discuss with folks when you're going through a course. Like, what are the features that you want in your training or course or whatever it is? So maybe a feature is, I need the person to be able to make the capability to go back and make another decision if they're in maybe some kind of a decision wayfinder type situation. And that's a really good one. And one of the reasons I wanted folks to post on this is to get thinking about what are those things that irritate you as a learner when you're experiencing them. And so one of the things that we do, or my team does, is we look at the things that are most common or commented about on our user experiences, and we make checklists on things. So, okay, we are going to make sure that navigation only has 2 levels or something like that. I'm just throwing that out there. That's not actually one of the things. But you can make a checklist for your team, or even if you're working with a vendor or you are a vendor, maybe you have a checklist or tenets on how your team operates when it comes to the experience of your training. So that's just one tip. And I'll share all these later. I'll do a blog post or something so everyone can review them. So the next piece, I want to talk a little bit about project improvement. So there's 3 main ways that I go about doing project improvement. So the first way is usability tests, and that's going to be the easiest way for everyone. The next way is a little bit more technical, and that's using Experience API. So if you've been out on the exhibition floor, there's tons of vendors with learning record stores that store statements or data on different things in learning experiences. And so that's XAPI. And then surveys to improve projects, and hopefully I don't get a lot of uncredibility for this, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how I use surveys, because I know there's a little bit of controversy around surveys as well. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is surveys, then XAPI, and then we'll do a really quick 5-minute usability test. All right, so surveys. So this is an example of a RISE course. I did this as a mock-up in Adobe XD, which is a free prototyping design type of tool. And so this isn't actually in the RISE course. But what I did was I added this feedback tag here. So one of the things that I like to do and make sure on every single project, I have a way for users to give feedback. It doesn't have to be at the end of the course. It can be something like a tag. So hopefully this loads. It wasn't loading earlier. Oh, here it goes. Okay. So as you can see, I'll step aside so you can see it a little bit better. When you click on the feedback tag, what happens is, it's very slow. It will pop out, and then you will be able to rate it, and then there's a free-form response area. So in that free-form response area, what would happen is you would be able to say, oh, I haven't found what I'm looking for, or I have a bug in this place, or something, and you can get feedback on that. So when you think about that, and there you can see, it's really slow for some reason on here, but you can see it goes out. When you have the results in, you may have thousands per course potentially, depending on how large your audience is, or you could have hundreds of courses you deliver a year. So you're probably like, oh, how can I manage that? That's not scalable. So one of the things that I like to look at, and I'm very interested in now, is natural language processing. So what I'm going to share, how many of you know what natural language processing is? So a few of you. So this video will cover what it is. And so what I like to do is you can take all of that data, export it to Excel. So if you're using something like Qualtrics, which is a survey tool, or SurveyMonkey, or any of those other ones, you can export all of that data, upload it to natural language processing tools. So there's one that's covered in this video. There's another called, I think it's Luminoso, and you can upload it, and what it will do is read all of the data, and it will just put it into categories. But this will explain it a lot better than I explained it.
Companies want to improve operations and keep their employees safe. But it is never easy. Machinery breaks, and someone has to go fix it. Picture yourself 200 feet in the air on an icy oil rig. These repairs are not only expensive, but also dangerous. Now, companies know that by better analyzing their data, they can improve their operations, thereby saving money and keeping their employees safer. But there's a challenge. Only 20% of the data needed for this analysis is in a structured format, like spreadsheets or databases. That's data that computers can easily use. The other 80% of it is in the form of text, like repair manuals, injury reports, and notes jotted down by technicians. This information is extremely valuable, but due to its size and structure, it has largely been invisible to analytics teams. Imagine you're searching a database of injury reports. You want to find lower body injuries. What do you search? Analysis from one large utility company showed that lower body injuries returned only a small number of results, far fewer than existed in reality. That's because their search tool was looking for the exact keywords, lower body injuries. But when the analysts used more specific search terms, like foot injuries, that returned many more results, where foot was used in the context of distance. So while they had more results than searching for just lower body injuries, they weren't the results they wanted. This was because a foot can be both a body part and a unit of measurement. And while humans can determine context and know the difference, until recently computers were largely stumped. Thanks to this field of AI, called natural language processing, computers can now analyze and understand textual data. In case you're curious, here's how natural language processing works at a high level. NLP algorithms can't read text like we do, but they can look for patterns, and they find these patterns by turning huge amounts of text into matrices. When analyzing text, the algorithm might first remove words that don't really offer us much value, stuff like a, the, is, and are. These are called stop words. Then the algorithm might split the sentences into groups of words and count how many times each group of words appears in each document, and how many documents have that group of words out of all the documents being analyzed. Without knowing anything at all about the text, the algorithm can then tell how often a given word or phrase appears in a given document, and how many documents contain that phrase out of all of the documents. So tokens that appear lots of times in lots of documents may not mean much, but tokens that appear frequently in only a few documents tell us that something's going on. For example, if we fed injury reports across all of our oil wells into this basic algorithm, and we see that falling debris injuries are clustered around reports from rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, we might then know about a new piece of machinery or process or environmental condition or something else that is causing injuries before management hears about it. Now, this is just a basic example. When combining vast amounts of data and advanced NLP algorithms developed at Spark Cognition, our customers are seeing tremendous improvements in operational efficiency and safety. Wind turbine operators are finding answers that previous solutions missed. Spark Cognition finds the meaning in the data and makes that available. Oil and gas operators are able to ask natural language questions when performing diagnostics before repairs. So with advanced technology like Deep NLP from Spark Cognition, you can now unlock the value of your unstructured data. Every email, every maintenance log, and every injury report become actionable insights that can drive revenue and reduce costs. And it's not just the energy industry that can harness the power of Deep NLP. If you want to learn more about how Spark Cognition can help you generate value from your unstructured data, please keep reading at sparkcognition.com.
All right, so you're probably wondering the benefit of UX with that. There is a benefit, but there's also a huge benefit when you're looking for performance gaps. So if you have data, raw data that you can use and look at, you can also see where there might be gaps in safety, performance, different things, and then target that. And then if you get the same data again, you can go back and correlate the two and see if there's any change or difference. So it's not just great for user experience, but if you have loads of surveys and things where you want to know, like, are people getting stuck somewhere? Is there a bug or navigation, something that you don't know about? You could use surveys as a way to look at that data. So you could see, what are people saying about the user experience? So maybe we have a confusing navigation, or there's not autonomy like you talked about. And so what we can do with our teams is look at that data and then make changes and say, this is an area that we need to focus on or we need to improve upon. So it's great for operational efficiency as well as performance gaps and many other things. So the next piece is XAPI, and instead of telling you about XAPI, I'm going to show you. So we're going to do a usability test. So for the usability test, I created this virtual reality project, I think like 2 or 3 years ago, and it was part of the XAPI cohort. So if you got a chance to see Megan Torrance speak, there's a free XAPI cohort where you can go and learn and work on XAPI projects and work on a group, and you can actually learn and do it yourself and then implement it in your organization. And so that's exactly what I did. So this is the first project that I did for the cohort. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my kind volunteer to come up and hand over the mic. And for a usability test, so this is how the Norse group does it. So what they do is they hand someone a prompt. So you want to hand the person a prompt so that they get used to reading it. You give them a goal. So my goal is find 2 facts at the waterfront. And you have them narrate their experience, and you record them doing it. So you can see, where are they stopping, where are they hesitating, are they able to achieve the goal, and then you could go and make changes based off of that. And so this is something that I would do in design, but because I'm also showing you XAPI, we're gonna do it on something that's already been developed, but we can pretend it's a design. So come on up. And I'm gonna ask him to read the prompt just so he gets comfortable with narrating what he's doing on the screen. Oh, and actually, let me pull it up for you because you're probably like, what the heck, where do I go? All right, and so there's a much easier way to do this if you're interested in VR. Trivantis has a scenario VR tool that will do this for you, and it's already hooked up to an LRS. I'm using Yet for this example because I have a sandbox already tied up, but I use Learning Locker quite often. So you're gonna use this one on this side, yeah. And so, if you could read the prompt out loud. Oh, that's on that you're holding. Sorry. I'm putting him on the spot.
Narrate your experience as you interact with the site. For example, if you are scrolling down the page, state, I am scrolling down the page. Your mission is to find 2 facts at the waterfront. You may begin.
All right. So what you want to do is, as you're going down, just kind of say like what you're experiencing. If you're frustrated with anything, just in general, like what you're experiencing.
It's easy to navigate, that's the first thing. I can easily scroll down. I can focus on the content, there are no visuals disrupting. Okay.
So that one is actually not the right one. So that's the first key. So if you go back to the first tab there, so that's something that we would look for in the user experience. So the waterfront's actually further down, and what you did was you clicked on the first one there, and that one didn't load fully. So for me, something that I might go back and do is either have that load fully, or if you're on a bigger screen, they all line up so you'll see them all at once. This is like an iPad screen because I have it to the side, and then if you're on a mobile device, it's all lined up in one. So that's something I might change. So if you could find 2 facts in the waterfront. Thank you. And that was perfect. All right, that's awesome. So you've found 2 facts successfully. Thank you. I think that was a good test,
great,
actually.
Great.
So what I'm going to do, and you can get a chocolate from David. And I owe you a coffee or something at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh this. So I forgot to refresh so that it would come on live. So when we go down here, he did not enter an email address in, but you can see the interactions that he did. And this isn't a good example of XAPI because for some reason I have the German version of experienced up there. I don't know what happened. But you can see here that he experienced, and it should say what it's like on the waterfront, and fact 1 and fact 3. So he found 2 facts, but they're 2 different facts. So what you can do if you're able to use XAPI is you can really track what the user went down. So if you're doing something like software simulation and there's an intended path that you want to see what the user does, you can see if they're doing that path that you intended for them to do, or if they're clicking elsewhere. And if they're clicking elsewhere, not only can you measure the performance, but you can also go back to your product team and say, hey, we're seeing people do this, so maybe your product needs to be improved. Maybe it's not learning, maybe it's something else. So I like to use XAPI as a way to bolster user experience. It's not the only thing you can use it for. Obviously, everyone's talking about it for performance. That's a huge deal. And you can also use it for operational excellence on your team, which I'll talk a little bit about. And feel free, if anyone has any questions about this, feel free to ask me afterwards. We can connect. XAPI is another very, very big passion topic for me that I love to discuss. So I'm very open to talking about that as well. So the next part is we are going to play a little game. So this is the user experience quick questions game. So I want you to turn to the person who has the phone who's going to be entering. And what we're going to do, and I'll just pull up the first one here. And I haven't done this before, oh, actually, I forgot. I'll do this prompt first. So what we're going to do is you're going to test with your team. So do the test with your team. So the first thing that you're going to look at is what would you change? So there's going to be two different options for you to pick from. You're going to pick the best option, what you think is the best user experience. There's one slightly different thing about both, just so you know. And then you want to talk about why. So why is that the best option, or why isn't it? And then maybe what is the impact to the user, but I would just focus on the why. And then if you go home and try this with your team, so if you look at maybe an example you had on your own team, it would be good to discuss, like, what ideas do you have to change that thing? So we're going to give this first one a go here. So the person on your team will answer for you, and I apologize, the Mentimeter doesn't let me make it bigger, so you may have to kind of like squint or look up. But there's two slightly different things in this, this example, and so these are all examples of things that I've created on projects in the past. So what I want you to do is vote for which is the better one, and then discuss with your team why, and then we'll come back together and I'll reveal what you all answered on the poll. So just go ahead. It's the easiest thing. Like, performance is like a whole other, it's harder to do that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll try to go like a little faster through some of them. I just have this and then I have design systems. So hopefully I can do like 20 minutes on this and like go through that like really quickly. Yeah. Yeah, I'll try that. All right, so if you haven't voted yet, make sure to start voting. Try to vote as soon as possible. Not unless I check this. All right, so I'm gonna hide it so we can see. Ooh, all right, so this is quite interesting. We've got like a tie here almost. Okay, so I was anticipating it would be much different. So I want one person from a group to respond why they chose answer 2. Oh, and now people, are you changing your answers? Just as a reminder, I can put it back up. Oh, yeah. Oh. can you send? Oh yeah, I know, you could have given him the chocolate. No.
We're doing lean analysis.
Come get your chocolates after.
I chose the answer to make consensus with the rest of the team. But that was based on...
It's the echo chamber answer?
Yeah, that was based on a response that was said just before I had to choose as well.
Thank you. How about number 1? Anyone want to say why you chose number 1? Oh, this group, these 2 people.
Thanks, Rob. So it drives me crazy, and we agree, drives me crazy when you fill in a form and you click on the box and the text disappears. Why?
Yes, exactly. This is exactly it. And I'll tell you what, I'm also very vocally self-critical, so there's another thing about this that isn't right, but that is the correct answer. So I have posts to all these so that you can read afterwards, but there's specific rules in UX for when you're working with form fields and labels. So one of the things I also did wrong was I didn't have like the actual like prompt inside of the box for them to fill out either. So it should have something like an example or like what the actual, like some instructions or something inside of the form field as well. Yes?
So why do we then see mostly in most of the companies using the second instead of the first?
So because a lot of companies don't have good user experiences. Yeah, and I mean, you see it all the time in some of the best companies, but that's why user experience design, if you look up on the web, is growing. It's growing so hugely because these little things, they really do increase revenue. It's absolutely crazy how such a small thing can do that. And there's also a website called growth.design. Absolutely fabulous. It will tell you how companies have received like millions of dollars and sometimes billions of dollars because of their good user experience design, how it has impacted it. It's got tons of amazing case studies in the form of comics. It's absolutely fun. And they analyze like companies like Starbucks, their app, and different things like that. It's a great resource. So that's with the label text. Now let's move on to our next one. We'll see how many we can get through here. So this one is a quiz app for a driving test in the US. And so I want you to take a look at this, and same thing with your team, discuss and vote. And then we'll do the same thing again.
I'll go and stand down in the middle. I'll go and stand
Oh yeah, thank you.
Point me in the right direction. If you want. Or should I tell you? Yeah, you can tell it. So, so I think at the bottom, the one on number 1, the home is so indicating.
Is it what?
We're trying to work out whether that's an actual state or whether it's just the icons are in the system. So we're not sure whether it's saying.
Oh, this is just a question.
Whether it's.
Yeah, it's really hard to see it up there.
Which already maybe shows there's an indication.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's a kind of live
That's. I'm not going to say anything.
a better approach would perhaps be to have the background.
All right, you should be about done voting. So I'm going to reveal the answers once again, and we'll see how many people change their answer after they've submitted. So, okay, got it. So which is better and why? So there's a lot of people. Oh, what is? Oh, okay. I don't know what's happening there. All right. All right, so whoever voted for answer 1, please raise your hand if you would like to tell us why. And so a reminder of that. And I really apologize. These are so small.
finally
using,
when we
like, the-
worked it out. and we
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
expand it. Because number one, the home button is highlighted. So you know where you are. I mean, I think it's a home button. My eyesight is not that brilliant, but there's a darky bit on the first bit.
Got it, yes. And then now I want to hear number 2.
I'm going for something nearer me, actually.
And this is deceiving, so I'll reveal after this.
The only difference we could see was the highlighting of the buttons down the bottom, and we felt like because they were clearer, they were more of a distraction on one, so we preferred 2. Well, some of us.
Got it. Okay, so I feel like I may have done a very poor job of this, but just so you can see, so the 2 designs are very different. So this is a quiz question slide, and so if this one were on the home, we would want it to be highlighted, showing that that's where they're currently at. But because that's not what it is, and they're on a quiz question slide, it's different. But the thing that really is different about this is all of the icons are different. They're different rounding, they're different width. They're all completely different, which is hard to see because it's very small. But there's a big thing with inconsistent design when it comes to visuals and logos and things. It doesn't earn trust with people. And so I have this resource here just on consistency with icon design and consistency in general. So this is another one that I'll give out, and it shows the do's and don'ts, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and it gives reasons why behind that. So let's move on to the next one. And I have 5 of these total. If you get sick of it, just be like, move on to the next part. So this one is a little quiz that I was building in Storyline, and I actually did as like a design activity with our team. We all developed different ones. And this is, but it has different content in it because I'm not allowed to share stuff at work. So it has to do with different types of folks who are in engineering and trying to figure out who fits this description. So which one do you think is better and why? Discuss with your team and vote. This one's pretty easy, I think, maybe. 3? Huh?
It's okay to have some easy ones as well.
All right, we should be wrapping up. Everyone feeling like mostly done? Let's see, revealing. Whoa, oh my goodness. I love it. This is what makes me joyous because this is my biggest pet peeve in the entire world. So there's 3 teams out here who did vote for number 1, and then there's 38 that voted for number 2. So I think we'll just go directly to the number 2. So anyone want to offer up why you voted for number 2? Oh.
We went for 2 because you could see the text is left-sided rather than the centralized at the top. So the readability is much better, looks cleaner.
Yes, absolutely. So I will admit, first of all, I'm absolutely terrible with things with fonts. Like fonts and text, everything like that, it's like a science. So when you think about line height and different things, there's an absolute math and science behind how you're supposed to approach that. But in regards to alignment, having things, paragraph text especially, but just actually mainly paragraph text, should never be center aligned. So when you look at a book and you're reading a book, how often is all of the text in the book center aligned? Never, because what happens is it creates this great cognitive load on your mind and strain on your eyes, because what you're doing is your eye is going in and out and in and out in order to read that thing. So whenever you have paragraph text, you should always center align it. I have this article here And this is 10 bad typography things for folks who are working with text, and it also links to some other UX articles here. So it talks a little bit about the alignment and how you have to work so much harder to read, things like that. And we have a question back there, or a comment, or something.
I think he just wants another chocolate.
And then one other thing that I try to do is, if you have a lot of text people are reading, use the serif font. That also helps as well. It's if there's like a ton of text. Yes?
Mel, I fight every day with content, people who, in my organization, the organization I work with, make everything justified both right and left, as though you're reading a newspaper, and it means that it's even. And what's your thoughts on stuff that is aligned? It's the, I can't remember what the technical term is. It's justified, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the scenario. So every project's going to be different. I'm not saying don't ever use centerline text. Like that type of thing is great for headers and things like that. It just depends. So what I do is, depending on what the project is, I'll go and Google and do research and look, because there's so many articles and with actual data backing them up on when to use what and how. So for instance, I've done this before. Even on my website, I at one point had things center aligned when it came to my paragraph text, and I had gone and changed it after I found out that it was causing people strain. So another thing is, on forms, there's data to show that you should put buttons on the left. I was doing a project with my team, and they were like, oh, you should move the buttons to the left. I didn't know why, and they didn't know why. And I was like, no. I was like, that's dumb. I don't want to do that. And then I kind of sat back, and I was like, okay, maybe it's something. So I went and I started researching it, and there were a bunch of articles saying like why to do it. So, and in any case, I think it's great to research it, bring it to your stakeholder, whoever you're working with, and explain, okay, well, here's the impact, here's the difference it could make, and maybe let's just test it with the users, do a quick test, because that's something very simple you could do a test with. Huh? Oh, it's covered, yeah. So, I mean, it is an art. There's just so much to know about all of this stuff. So, yeah, so you can see the justification one here, yeah. It is true. Okay, don't want to reveal the next one. All right, so on to the next one here. And so go ahead and regroup with your teams, answer, and then we'll discuss why. And this one's a little bit harder to tell on the screen, just as a hint. Yeah, it's hard to tell on the screen. If you want to know, so this one is darker than this one. This one is using pure black, and then this one is not using pure black.
Yeah, save me melting as well.
I'm sneaking a peek. All right, you should be putting in your answers. Okay, I'm telling it's getting quieter, so maybe we'll go on to this. So I love this one. This is a controversy again. All right, so let's start with number one. Who said number one and why? Anyone want to answer? He's got the chocolates. Are they from Switzerland?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Chocolates for the whole table. Okay.
The only reason we went for one was because if there's an option of actually making a word bold, we have that flexibility. However, with the second option, everything is already bold, so it doesn't give us that flexibility if we want to make a certain word stand out. So that was the decision and reasoning behind it.
Got it. And now, number 2. Who voted for number 2 and why?
It's you.
Oh, we got to get the chocolates out there. Oh gosh, there's people all over, so
Oh, sorry. It was,
I don't know.
whoever I've been to.
He had his hand up too, but I didn't look over to the side, so I don't know who
Yeah.
did it first. The light is very bright.
I think the second one, the darker background, gives more visibility and readability to the text in front, and you don't have to concentrate a lot and stretch your eyes, just to look for the words and the things. So it's much more clearer and easier to read, I think.
Okay.
That was the consensus on our table.
Awesome. So very close, very close. So actually, it's number 1, and I'll explain why. So so you want your experience, your design to be accessible, which is really, really important. And both of these go over AAA standards for accessibility, which is really good. But there is a lot of research behind using a very, very dark, so pure black and pure white on each other. It causes eye strain. So there's a lot of articles about this as well. This is a really great site for just looking at UX stuff, so UX movement. So why you should never use pure black for text or backgrounds. And then it goes into talk about white as well, and how to use dark gray, and also still keep it accessible because you want it to be accessible. So for this one, it decreases eye strain and strengthens reading stamina. So if you do have something, like maybe you have SOPs or user guides or something people are reading, this will help with those types of things. And you can see this back here as well. And there's a lot of other things on here for that too. All right, last one, and then I'll share some resources on where you can keep learning these things, kind of like some micro learning. So I do these exercises basically like every week. So this next one, go ahead, discuss with your group which one is better and why.
The last few to be had, I think, is what it is. It's all up to play for. Yeah, by all means, that should be taken. But yeah, I think Mel's last slide links to all the articles you can show as well.
All right, I'm taking a peek. Ooh. Okay, I think we can go over this one now. It seems to be there. We'll do the same thing with this one. So whoever voted for number 1, and there's a huge consensus around this, do you want to explain why you voted for this? Raise of hand.
Somebody from the back here.
Oh, wow, that was quick. We got a quick one.
We went for that one because of the basis we couldn't read the text on the other one because of the lighter background and the white text. It just didn't stand out. It got lost into the background, whereas on the darker background, you could actually read what that information was.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So this was a performance support tool that I built. It's on my website if you want to check it out, and it also uses XAPI for like a fake pasta company and to teach people about like how to serve up the rewards program to their customers. So for this one, that is correct. Number 1 is the right answer. And so what I did on this example was I just put an overlay over that picture. It's just like a dark one that has kind of like a very like changed opacity so that you can see that text there. And so the article that goes along with this is ensure high contrast for text over images. And this one goes into why and how it makes a big difference in usability. So those were your tests for today. And so I want to leave you with this quote. by Charles Eames. The details are not the details. They make the design. So when you think about all of these small things, think about all of the bad things happening at once, and think about how that might impact your learner's experience, how that might impact them being able to perform. So even though these seem like small things, they add up very quickly, and there's so many other things that go wrong. And the reason that I chose these are critical mistakes that I have made. Like, I've made all of these at one point. So these are things that I've seen in a lot of e-learning, and if you want to learn about more, so I absolutely love this. So I wrote an article a little while ago on my series or newsletter now, This Side Up. And so what I did was I have all of these different UX accounts on Instagram. You don't have to have an Instagram account to view these, but there will be kind of like micro learning. So there's those tests on there where you can just see the different things you have to guess, and they change. And you can see examples as well. There's also some humorous ones called this one's Bad UX that just shows funny UX things. But there's tons of resources out there like this. So this is one of them that you could go to and see and try to figure out. So this one's which UI is more correct, and then they'll give you the answers, and they'll usually give you links to resources on why with data and research. Oops. And so that's that. So I'm going to move on to the last part of this, and we've got about 13 minutes left. So this is design systems. So how many of you, by raise of hands, are familiar with design systems, have heard of design systems? So a few people here. That's awesome. So I am very blessed. My partner he's an engineer, and he works on a design system for a company called Redfin. So it's a real estate company in the US. I don't think they're over here yet. I think they might just be in Canada other than the US. So he creates components for a design system. And for some reason, this is not expanding the correct way. Let's go full screen. Alrighty, there we go. So I like to think of a design system and the way that it operates in some respects like Legos. So when you think about Legos, you have tons of different blocks, but you can use the same block in many, many designs. So when you think of a design system and you think of something like a button or some navigation or something, you can reuse that in many, many different ways. So a design system, you can have buttons that you download and apply to many projects, or maybe use a specific menu. And this is where the piece on operational excellence and XAPI comes in. You can track how people on your team, or if you're a vendor, I guess also your vendor team, are using these things, and you can calculate some numbers with cost savings on this. So I'll go into that in a minute. So some examples of design systems, there are thousands of design systems out there. So one of them, I just wanted to show you one for education because this makes the most sense. So this is one for Pluralsight, which is an education company. And so design systems are mainly for engineers and designers, but you can take the same concept and apply it to learning. So it's not just about a place to download components like buttons and reuse them, and it's not just a place for brand and style and all that. There's a lot more behind it. So there's rules behind things, when to use things, how to use things. So you can build a scrappy one in something like a tool like Rise, or you can have someone on your team, if they code, build you a site that has all these things. So you can see this here. So this is theirs, and they've got iconography. You can have things, these are all the components that they use. So they use badges and banners and carousels and checkboxes, and all these things are used in their products. So you can see everything used in their product, and it's used multiple times. And they talk about how to use them. Voice and tone, that's another big one. So maybe you have on your learning team a specific voice you want to use, or maybe you have someone who loves UX writing and you want to write in a specific way or use copy in a specific way. You can have rules around that in there. And you can also use, add your process in there. So if you have a process for your team, it could be embedded in the system as well. So, and they've got design assets and all that in here. So the next one is, and I think this is a very poor example, so I attempted to build an example of a design system, and I built this like a few years ago, and this is built in a tool called Hugo. So it's just a HTML site that I downloaded and restyled. So you can come in here and you can do a search for specific things. So this one has Storyline 360 components, so it's just an example so you can see what this might look like. So if everyone was using the same brand and style and whatnot, I'd have them download this and they could just reuse the buttons everywhere. Also, it's great for accessibility. So if you want to have accessibility built in, you can have all your different components and things built for accessibility that you can easily change out. So it makes that more scalable, and there's no excuses not to make things accessible then. And then there's also some other things in here. You can do animation. I have like animation kits in here. So if you have some kind of, well, I was going to put them in here. If you have some kind of animation kits that you use to scale design or sound effects or things like that, you can also add them. And then this next piece, if you're looking for design system inspiration, there's this site called adele.uxpin.com. And this has all of these different design systems for loads and loads of companies. So BBC has theirs in here if you want to check out BBC's. There's just tons. Duolingo's in here, so they've got theirs. I haven't seen that one, so that's probably pretty cool. Yeah, there's gov.uk, so there's that. I wonder what that's like. Yeah, so you can come check it out. And a lot of them have like fun names as well, so they'll give them cute names too. There's one called Nachos, and that's Trello's. They call it Nachos. So you can have a little fun with it. And then this is Hubspot. So this is, there's actually a case study on this. I have it as one of the resources or credits at the end. So at one point, Hubspot did a design audit. And one of the things you can do with your team is look at across all your projects, what is inconsistent. So HubSpot found that they had, I think, over 100, or there may have been 1,000 shades of gray across their whole entire platform. They had 6 different primary buttons, so you can see there's a lot of different ones here. So when you think about that and the user experience, it's really inconsistent for that user. So what they did is they just did a full-on design audit and just made sure that everything in all of their products was using the same primary button, same colors, so that it wasn't absolute chaos for the user. They wouldn't know what to click on, what page they were on, let alone the product, in some cases at some companies. So a design system really helps a company to standardize and make that product cohesive. So that brings me to the numbers, because everyone loves numbers, right? So this is according to PayScale. I feel like this might be a little low. I don't know. You can let me know this. So according to PayScale, instructional designers I think this is the UK, or no, sorry, that wouldn't be UK because it's pounds. In England, have $21 per hour. Does that seem right? I don't know. 21 pounds. So if a person is making 21 pounds an hour and an activity and storyline takes this long to develop, so 8 hours, and they've reused that activity, say it's a quiz or some kind of scenario or something, 15 times, then there would be a cost savings of 2,520 pounds. So you could use something like XAPI to track what people are using on your team, or I mean, you could do it manually as well. You don't have to use XAPI. And you can really look at the things that you're building and putting in your design system and say, okay, we're not building this from scratch. We're not building a button every single time. I mean, that adds up every time that you have to create a state, change it, put it in, and it's the same thing for internal companies as vendors, as other people. So this is a way that you can look at your design and create a cohesive and scalable design, and also show that you're saving your team money in your company. So that brings me to one of our final questions here. So in your group, would you, or actually, you can do this, everyone can do this one. Just put what you would add to your design system, and these are really small. So the first one's accessibility guidelines, like what would be the most important to you? Accessibility guidelines, reusable components and templates, guidelines on how to use the templates, design language branding, and standard process. I'm just curious. And I'll share this as well afterwards. So we've got a lot of people putting reusable components and templates, and also design language and branding, accessibility guidelines. So we want to leave time for questions, so I'm probably going to wrap this up right now. So does one person want to very, very quickly answer what they voted and why? Like why you think it would be helpful?
Anybody near the front like to answer?
I've gone for the reusable components, like most people, and partly because I think it would have the biggest impact, because people are much more likely to copy and paste correctly than to follow rules correctly.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest one, and I think probably the easiest one to go about because of that as well. So I'm just going to move along so that we have a little bit more time. So something to aid you, and if you're going to go and implement a design system after this, is there's designsystemchecklist.com, and you can look through this. It won't all apply to you, but you can go through, and it will give you some ideas on what you might want to add to your design system, such as writing guidelines, tone of voice, also things in relation to components, so accessibility sizes, different things like that. So you can just come here and check this out and use this. So that's it, that's me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I think I'm gonna leave a little bit of time for questions. We've got like 3 minutes.
That's cool.
Thank you.
So lots of the sessions at Learning Tech, they're quite theoretical and they're quite kind of strategic. And it's brilliant to have something which is just so tactical. There's tons of stuff there that all of us can just pick up and start using tomorrow. So we've got time for a few questions. Any questions from the audience?
I think he has one.
Great session, Mel.
Thank you.
I want to talk about colors.
Colors.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't know if I can. I don't know. I feel like I'm not a color theory. There's like a whole theory behind color.
Because in different parts of the world, that is treated very differently. We work with a lot of Scandinavian clients, and there's very minimal colors. There's just hardly any color. It's just grays and whites.
Yes.
Very minimalistic. So is there something out there which is more, we can talk about more about color and usage of color?
Yeah, there's a whole like slew of different tools for looking at colors, and I think most people probably have specific colors that they have to stick to, but if you don't, there's tons of tools out there. Adobe has one. It used to be called Adobe Cooler, but now they call it something else. What was it called? Kuler, but it used to be called that. But there's tons. If you just do a quick Google search, lots will come up for color inspiration. But I was at a talk last week in San Jose in California, and if you want to look at things for color, one of the biggest things is you want to make sure that it's accessible and you check the contrast. So I have this button here. And this is done in Adobe XD, so I use this for all of my prototyping and testing and whatnot. And they've got plugins built in, so you can do colorblind simulations, you can do contrast. So if you check the contrast here, you can see what it meets for the contrast level on different things. So I don't think I grabbed that whole thing, but you can check on there. The colorblind piece is also very, very handy. So you can see I met everything except AAA, so you want to at least meet AA in the US. I don't know what it is in the UK. And then the colorblind piece is very good too.
I wonder, would you be a bigger advocate of designing something once, building something once based on best practice, or designing an A/B test in case the population you're delivering it to are different from the wider population?
That's a really great question. So designing two different things. I think like if it's scrappy, right? Like I wouldn't want to invest too much in it depending on what it was. So using a tool like this, you can super, super easily prototype something and change it and do those tests. So I would definitely test it before I develop it. I test everything before I develop it because I don't want to have to develop something and then go back and have to spend all kinds of hours working on it. So I would definitely do a design first and then test it.
Cool. So I think we're up to time now. That's a wrap. Learning Technologies 2020. So it's been a hell of a ride. And thanks very much, Mel. Another round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.